Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you in thanking all the staff that have come into the House this morning to help us. Cleaning staff, catering staff, security staff, officials and our own staff. They've given up a weekend in order to help our deliberations. I also want to thank the Prime Minister for an advance copy of his statement. He has renegotiated the withdrawal agreement and made it even worse. He's renegotiated the political declaration and made that even worse. We're having a debate today on a text for which there is no economic impact assessment and no accompanying legal advice. This government has sought to avoid scrutiny throughout the process and yesterday evening made empty promises on workers' rights and the environment. The same government that spent the last few weeks negotiating in secret to remove from the withdrawal agreement legally binding commitments on workers' rights and the environment. This government cannot be trusted and these benches will not be duped. Neither, Mr. Speaker, will the government's own workers. The head of the Civil Service Union, Prospect, yesterday met the Right Honourable Member for Surrey Heath, and at the conclusion of that meeting he said, and I quote, "I asked for reassurances that the government would not diverge on workers' rights after Brexit. He could not give me those assurances." And as for the much-hyped world-leading environment bill, the legally binding targets will not be enforceable until 2037. For this government, the climate emergency can always wait. Mr. Speaker, this deal risks people's jobs, rights at work, our environment and our National Health Service. We must be honest about what this deal means for our manufacturing industry and people's jobs. Not only does it reduce access to the market of our biggest trading partner, it leaves us without a customs union which will damage industries all across this country in every one of our constituencies. From Nissan in Sunderland, Heinz in Wigan, Airbus in Broughton and Jaguar Land Rover in Birmingham, thousands of British jobs depend on a strong manufacturing sector. And a strong manufacturing sector needs markets through fluid supply chains all across the European Union. A vote for this deal would be a vote to cut manufacturing jobs all across this country. This deal, Mr. Speaker, would inevitably and absolutely inevitably lead to a Trump trade deal, forcing the UK to diverge from the highest standards and expose our families once again to chlorine-washed chicken and hormone-treated beef. This deal...
Order. I did say that the statement by the Prime Minister must be heard. The response of the Leader of the Opposition in the best traditions of parliamentary democracy must also be heard, and it will. Jeremy Corbyn.
This deal fails to enshrine the principle that we keep pace with the European Union on environmental standards and protections, putting at risk our current rules from air pollution standards to chemical safety. We all know the public concern about these issues, all at the same time that we're facing a climate emergency. And as for workers' rights, we simply cannot give the government a blank cheque. Mr. Speaker, you don't have to take my word for all of this. Listen, for example, to the TUC General Secretary Frances O'Grady, who says this. She does represent an organisation that has 6 million members affiliated to it. This deal, Mr. Speaker, would be a disaster for working people. It would hammer the economy, cost jobs and sell workers' rights down the river. Listen to Make UK, representing British manufacturers, who say, and I quote, "This is Make UK's comments on this deal. Members opposite might care to listen to them. Commitments to the closest possible trading relationships in goods have gone. Under this deal, differences in regulation between the UK and the EU will add cost and bureaucracy. Our companies will face a lack of clarity, inhibiting investment and planning. Listen also to the Green Alliance, who said the deal amounted to a very sad Brexit read from a climate perspective. The message, Mr. Speaker, is clear. This deal is not good for jobs, damaging for our industry and a threat to our environment and our natural world. It's not a good deal for our country, and future generations will feel the impact. It should be voted down today by this House. Mr. Speaker, I also totally understand the frustration and the fatigue across the country and in this House. But we simply cannot vote for a deal that is even worse than the one the House rejected 3 times. The government's own economic analysis shows this deal would make the poorest regions even poorer and cost each person in this country over £2,000 per year. If we vote for a deal that makes our constituents poorer, we are not likely to be forgiven for doing that. Mr. Speaker, the government is claiming that if we support their deal, it will get Brexit done, and that backing them today is the only way to stop a no deal. I simply say nonsense. Supporting the government this afternoon would merely fire the starting pistol in a race to the bottom in regulations and standards. And if anyone had any doubts about this, we only have to listen to what their own honourable members have been saying. Like the one yesterday, who rather let the cat out of the bag, saying members should back this deal as it means we can leave with no deal by 2020. The cat has truly got out of the bag. So, can the Prime Minister confirm whether this is the case, and that if a free trade agreement has not been done, it would mean Britain falling on to World Trade Organization terms by December next year, with only Northern Ireland having preferential access to the EU market? No wonder the Foreign Secretary has said that this represents, and I quote, a cracking deal for Northern Ireland. They would retain frictionless access to the single market. It does beg the question, Mr. Speaker, why can't the rest of the UK get a cracking deal by maintaining access to the single market? The Taoiseach said, and I quote, "It allows the all-Ireland economy to continue to develop, and one which protects the European single market." Some members of this House do welcome an all-Ireland economy, but I didn't think that included the government and the Conservative and Unionist Party. The Prime Minister declared in the summer, "Under no circumstances will I allow the EU or anyone else to create any kind of division down the Irish Sea." You cannot trust a word that he says. Mr. Speaker, voting for a deal today won't end Brexit. It won't deliver certainty, and the people should have the final say. Labour is not prepared to sell out the communities that we represent. We are not prepared. We are not prepared to sell out their future, and we will not back this sell-out deal. This is about our communities now and about our future generations.
The Prime Minister.